Oh, man, a lot of tense games in the Southern Hemisphere, a lot of argy-bargy, but unfortunately, a lot of avoidable mistakes, and worse off on top of that, a lot of stress and undue gray hairs for a lot of us fans or just impartial fans of the game out there. Uh, I'm sure a lot of you are still stressed, lingering, maybe perhaps a little too much on a certain game, Canes, but I think that we need to all talk about it. Let's do this. It's group therapy. Let's break these down together. A lot of big games this weekend. The top are starting to close in a little bit of shuffling in the middle, and of course, who's gonna make the bottom two in the rungs? Let's go.
I need all the wins, yeah. Ain't no L's, I gotta get a no call and quits, yeah. Gotta keep on moving no matter how hard it gets.
Tucci-Zola, back to Baker, Baker with the fit. Kurt Baker in for DC, and this may well do it old glory with the try. The New Zealand Sevens legend, Kurt Baker with the cherry on top.
Can you believe it? The jubilation says it all from these DC players.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the On the Line Rugby podcast, a show brought to you by the Believe Sports Network. I'm your host, Micah Nagaishi, and welcome back. As I said in the cold open, I'm really still kind of stuck on a certain game from last weekend, aka the Canes game. We'll get breaking down into it a little bit more later, but let's break down some of the more positive, kind of straightforward games, something a little bit to cleanse the palate, I guess, from this weekend. And we'll start off with Chiefs versus Moana Pacifica. I really thought that Moana giving away as much penalties as they did, a lot of them very cynical and, let's be totally frank, stupid and very elementary grade penalties, put them on forever on the back foot. And that's really all she wrote for this game. I would say initially they were just too scrappy for the Chiefs to really open up. Excuse me, but they'd done it the right way. I really thought that the Chiefs through ALB really managing the game paid dividends, especially in his probing attack ability to just kind of draw more opponents in, get those offloads going, channeling vintage Sonny Bill from 2013 and carrying the Chiefs forward. I've been talking about it all year. For those of you who are just new to this, that Caleb Trask should be in for the Chiefs over Josh Jacob, over Josh Ioane and friends, etc. With the loss of David McKenzie to concussion. Unfortunately, it was revealed to me this week on the injury list that was just popped out for the Chiefs PR department that Caleb Trask suffered a knee injury and will be out for the rest of the year. That would explain a lot of the shakeup at 10 and the almost, I'm not going to say instability, but I would say questionability at that spot. Don't get me wrong, Jacob's a G. He showed it this night, and he did a really good job of managing the space, probing the attack. But I obviously think that if you're gonna have game managers in that lineup, I don't think there's anyone really better than Caleb Trask for what he did. I think a lot of people pin the really lackluster, I think would be a good politically correct word to use, years that the Chiefs have had on their decline on him. And unfortunately, and I don't think it really wasn't the case with him. Just as I've always said, kind of like that young Alex Smith, you're not going to win the game because of him, but you're also not going to lose in spite of him. He's just going to manage what you give him and try to do his job to keep the boys in the best positions to succeed. And for whatever reason, obviously he got hurt. So now they're pivoting over to Jacob, who's honestly kind of shaping up to be one of the better transfers over. I think that in his very limited appearances for the Chiefs, he's done a great job of not only managing the space, but kind of fusing in that DMAC level of, maneuverability in that position. And also putting Itenenana Seturo in that 15 jersey. Whoever thought of that was brilliant, okay? The guy was a freak. For all those who had him in fantasy, props off to you. I did not, and I was gutted to lose my first place spot because of him. So, Jeremy, we're not talking after this week if you watch this. But for now, let's get into really just the meat and potatoes of this game. Both teams, I think, were guilty too much of hero ball. I saw a lot of YOLO passes that didn't need to be made, passes into nowhere. They were just destroying a lot of scoring opportunities overall. If you're looking at just the entirety of the game, whether it was unnecessary offloads, not being confident carrying it into the contact, trying to open up passes where they didn't need to be, throwing guys who were not ready for the ball open, not getting good communication, just really boneheaded mistakes that really held both teams down early. I think for the Chiefs, they probably came into Mount Smart thinking that they were just going to roll them over. Obviously, yes, they kind of did once they got the ball rolling, but I think it started a little bit too late. This game should have been very clinical from start to end, and especially with the opportunities that Moana was giving you, that should have been cheese. That should have been like at least what, if I'm being honest, 40, 50 plus points minimum. Uh, I think it really just came down to who had the ball and who had the most explosiveness on the lineup. And obviously, between the cards and the injuries, it's the Chiefs. Obviously, the cards hurt Moana. They hurt the Chiefs as well. Injuries on both ends, especially on Moana, will be devastating. I think this year that was supposed to be a very happy year for them, a year for them to rebuild, not only through Tana Umaga, but obviously playing in Tonga, playing in Samoa. But it's just perhaps it wasn't in the cards. Maybe playing a physical team like the Chiefs drew a little bit too much out of them. But the injuries and possible suspensions that will come out of this game will definitely hurt Tano Umaga's lineup for the next weeks to come. These last 3 weeks are going to be critical for this group, and it's up to them, and they control their own destiny as to how they want to finish this year. As for another team that I thought would not be scrappy and ended up becoming, in my personal opinion, probably the most entertaining game of the week, not named the Canes and Blues, Rebels and Reds. How surprising is this? Kevin Foote, you came to play this week. You know, between the tempo, game management, and obviously use of space was insane from not only Ryan Lawrence, who, in my opinion, probably could have easily been the best nine of this week, but also Sam Talakai, who came in clutch for an injured Tani Alatupo, who again does not look totally healthy. I harped on it last week that he looked a little hampered, and it really showed. I think we're going to have another injury-filled season for Nella. Tongan Thor has just not been what he was for the last couple years, and I think the injuries are just taking their toll. Talakai, being the old head, comes into play early, and let me tell you, that boy balled out. For those of you who have watched the highlights or have watched maybe clips of the game, I suggest you watch the full game. Yes, the Reds dominated late, but this game was amazing. I really thought that this game was going to be very clinical by the Reds. JOC, Tate McDermott coming back, obviously having Harry Wilson and Fraser McBride there, Ryan Smith and friends, the Tumaga Allen and Penny Ravai duo, Matty Fessler. This game was slated to be what the Chiefs and Moana Pacifica game really should have been, and actually, surprisingly not. I really thought that between their space management and obviously the cynicism of and just lack of comms from the Reds, they allowed the Rebels to put them on the back foot early. And with that flat, patented Australian standard ball that's constantly quick, popping out of that lineup, Lawrence picking, going, sniping where he could, and just feeding it out to the back. So he did a great job. I really thought that Andrew Kellaway did a really good job in attempting to find what space he could in the beginning of the first half. Lockie Anderson did all right. And obviously the rest of the team outside of Carter Gordon did okay. I really thought Filippo Dungunu did a great job managing this lineup, especially with Hoost. I'm not sure what his first name was. I probably should have looked that up before recording this, but oof, such is life. Hoost did a great job in really playing the defensive role. Obviously, Dungunu, great. Carrying the torch of Lukan Salakaia-Loto. Obviously, losing Rob Leota for this week was huge for them. So putting in a bunch of just tone setters across that lineup, across the board. So you already got me lost for words. Just to be able to set it and forget it on that team and keep that culture going was huge. And having them there paid dividends. I really thought that they won across the board. If you look at the stat sheet, in every defensive margin, whether it was tackles percentage made, breakdowns, winning at scrums, lineouts, and obviously offensive pace. But they lost in explosiveness battle to the Reds, I think, easy. Unfortunately, this trend for the Reds on lack of comms, kind of slower defense, did flip over in the second round, and it was pretty dramatic. Perhaps no JOC lit a fire underneath the boys, but they came firing, and I think specifically on a certain set of calls, Dungunu not passing off the call that caused the break by Campbell to really score it by himself. and he was also not helped by the lack of pace of the covers. Really sealed it for them. I think between the Jock Campbell's 2 scores, Tim Ryan's score, and just the amount of times you gave JOC off the tee hurt this team greatly in the second half. They played hard, and then literally they gave their entire game in the first half. Now, whether that was intentional to just leave it all on the field, I'm happy for. But if you can't sustain it for the whole game, you're just going to look like the Fijians on a normal basis. You got to get a team that can play this way the entire way through, or else you're just going to burn your boys out. And it looked to be that case. I mean, for most of the second half, you had a lot of Rebels trying desperately to slow down the ball, get into the ruck, stay around the ruck, really, if they have to go for a counter clean. And they did a good job on most of it. But when it came down to the nitty gritty of those explosive moments, and a lot of it came down to ruck watching or just lack of communication. Guys with hands on their hips. Dungunu trying desperately to make a solo play, not calling out for the rest of his homies, saying, "Hey, come with me." For those American fans that play in SoCal, ice would be the call for that. Getting guys out wide and the pace on that, obviously with a little fatigue, it's understandable, but you just got to be there. Guys got to trust the guys are going to be there. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. And, between Jock Campbell and Tim Ryan and friends, they just lit up a show on them in the second half. And it was just a clinical showing by the Reds. I don't think that they still beat them across the board with guards to defensive margin and obviously offensive pace. But like I said, when it comes down to it, obviously it helps if you win across the board in that. But if you can win those explosive plays, we've seen teams in football and basketball do it. It's not the greatest way to win, but it's a way to win. And an ugly win is still a win on the stat sheet. So all things being considered, the game was avoidable. I really thought that they did okay in that regard. As for Carter Gordon, I didn't see enough out of him to really give a good or bad rating on him. I really thought that he just kind of, I'm not going to say lackadaisically played the game, but I guess I would say along the lines of a uh, C minus, I guess would be the grade. He did all right enough for me to pass him, but he didn't do anything that wowed me and said, "Wow, this is Carter Gordon," or "Wow, this is a world class head not named Carter Gordon." So take it with what you will. I think that's all we're going to get from him for the rest of this year. As for the Reds, I think the loss of Harry Wilson is going to hurt them in the long term. Obviously, Harry Wilson's always been hit with injury, and having him and Fraser McWright in that back row help out dividends for this Reds team. For Fraser McWright's ability to be that turnover machine, you have Harry Wilson, who's the bowling ball, and those goal-to-goal opportunities, those line breaks on the edge, those powerful, powerful game line mauls, and of course the pick and goes off scrum. Harry Wilson is him, and I don't think that's ever going to be the case where he's going to be usurped for his title. But I think him losing to, I believe it was a shoulder injury, by looks of it, maybe looking at surgery is not going to be a good look. And, while I do believe that he'll probably try to fight it out for the next 3 weeks, I don't think it'll be a smart idea. If the Reds have any thought remotely of self-preservation or player welfare, they'll keep him out for the rest of this year and hope that they can roll the dice into a playoff run. Because right now, yes, you do, obviously hold the 5th spot, but that could change easily. Your schedule is rough the next couple weeks moving forward, and I think that needs to be said that you guys are on notice now. And with Harry Wilson off that field, yeah, you have Fraser McWright, but who's going to be the Batman on this team? Will it be JOC coming off, off the bench and finally taking in that starting 10 role? Will it be Tate McDermott also coming off suspension? Will it be Fraser McWright? Will it be Matty Fessler? I just can't tell you. This team doesn't have their cultural leader in Harry Wilson. And I think that it's going to be a big test for them to see not only can they control their destiny in the playoffs, but also how will they rebound with this lack of obviously force on the field, but leadership on and off it. As for the Blues and Canes game, I'm just, words cannot describe how disappointed distraught I was, uh, lingering thoughts I had on this game for days. It wasn't a good time watching it live. We just got home to manage to watch it on the TV from start to finish. The entire time, I really thought that the Canes just didn't have it, and that they were getting, basically the Uno reverse card got given to them. And for those of you who are memes or love memes or are meme lords out there, my disappointment is everlasting and my day is ruined. Uh, just across the board, just lackluster effort on all ends outside of a couple players. you know, whether it comes to outside a set piece or the occasional explosive play, the Blues had it down from start to finish. I really thought they used the multiple shooter prober and cover D to really take away those explosive plays that the Canes are known for. Obviously, the Canes did a great job of that as well, but the Blues attack that has been filthy throughout the entirety of this year has shown up and came out to play in force, and obviously, having that on your lineup is going to do a lot of damage to you on defense, no matter what you do. Just like with the Rebels, you're going to wear yourself out. As for set piece, Numia, especially in those set pieces, was an absolute unit. He really carried a lot of, everything from scrum time, maul, and line out, doing a great job of taking hit up ball, second phase up, boom, taking breakneck plays off the breakdown. He did a great job in that. I really thought this gap scoring wise would have been a lot wider if it wasn't for the Canes penalties constantly putting them on the back foot, again, leading to fatigue. I think penalties were a big factor in this game. Don't get me wrong. Angus Gardner, great ref. Love having him. But I think having him as an AR and not the ref on the field was a problem. And I think it showed deeply just in the fact of some of the calls that were made. I thought some of them, especially in critical moments, were a little questionable. I love the use of the TMO, though, constantly, whether it was reviewing calls, changing them. I think it helped in a good way. It did not stop in any bad way. I definitely think that the Canes kind of threw this game. When the Blues started giving away penalties late in this game, I thought they had it in the bag. Okay. I think anyone else who watches this game will notice the Canes had it in the bag. The Blues gave up possession after possession after possession, and the Canes came firing. The entire lineup was fired up. Everybody's going for scoring opportunities. They're taking it in effectively. And I don't know what you did. Why would you do that? I'm glad, obviously, Jordy didn't go for the post. He wanted to go for the throat. That could have sent them to overtime. But with the Blues kind of in hot form at the moment, minus the penalties, I could have went either way. I wanted them to go for the jugular. So, obviously having them kick for the corner, go for the tap or go for the scrum would probably be their options. I personally would have, if, you didn't want to go to line out because, Patrick Tuipulotu and friends were kind of on you the entire game, kind of throwing off your groove. You couldn't really maul it in. I think the Blues are just too powerful in that forward pack in that regard. What's the next best option? Oh, I'll give you a hint. Scrum. You have the scrum. It's been dominating the whole game. What are you doing? Why would you go for a tap off of arguably probably one of your best players in Duplessis Karifi instead of tapping it off of, I don't know, say TJ Perinar and letting him try to run it in himself, or having him toss it out wide? I don't know anything. Not two couple, pick and go snipe, dirty ball run, and then toss it in a hospital passed out Isaiah Walker-Leawere, who is just going to get obviously blown out by our good friends of the pod, Ofatunga Fasi and friends, and just destroy house. What are you doing? How can you end the game like that? I'm not gonna say that they threw it for better sake, but I think after that, for those NFL fans out there, Calvin Ridley or I don't know anybody in the NBA, a certain someone who threw games for the Boston Celtics. uh, but why would you call that? I thought when TJ was going into that huddle that this was gonna be bang on, scrum it out, or if you're gonna go for the tap, at least do it a little better. I don't know, Bach inverted veer, anybody, anything else, and instead you go for that, like just. But But anyways, I'm gonna blow myself into a heart attack soon. Let's move into the Satyrs game that I thought was a little bit more straightforward, obviously less stress inducing. I thought it was explosive in both ends to open, but I think the lack of consistency through cynical play and really just franticness from the Satyrs gave the Liners some easy opportunities. Again, passing out to nowhere, going for home run ball, knocking on at the breakdown, knocking it on your own ruck. Like, what are you doing? Was just one of the things that I think gave a guy like Cam Miller, who is known for being exceptional off the tee this year, open shots. Especially you have Sam Gilbert also there. What are you doing? And let's not forget also, since I'm ringing it off my head, Fallout Fakatava's on that team, who's one of the best snipers in Super Rugby. What are you doing? As for the rest of this game, I think two things really stood out to me. Cody Taylor looked not to skip a beat. Despite taking a financial sabbatical, really rest up his legs, get his team ready for the playoffs. I really thought he did a good job and just not only being that leadership role in that on the field, but also great ball carrier, amazing lineout thrower, obviously, for the arguably third or fourth best all black hooker of all time. I think he lived up to that regard and helped really put them on the front foot when he had the opportunity to. Obviously, also having the Satyrs front row changed quite early in the 30th minute mark and just took over. They dominated the rest of the way, whether it was on defense, on scrum time especially, and definitely on attack. You could see it all across the board. George Bell, George Bauer, and friends, they really took over the game, and it just spelled what would have been certain defeat had it not been for a couple dumb calls that were done on the Satyrs line in terms of penalties late that really just took them out of the game and allowed the Landers to just take it for themselves. And I'm still very disappointed in the Satyrs. Obviously, not as much as the Canes. But let's move on to something positive. Let's celebrate someone's victories this week. Let's go to Team of the Week. As for my front row, I have Sam Talakai for the very reasons that he, as I described above, just prolific leader, great manager of tempo and space, amazing caller at scrum and lineout, and just overall clinical game. Matty Fessler from the Reds, clinical. We've taken out the tries, just running the ball expectively well, doing great scrums when he was on. Obviously, having great ball carry helps. Amazing defense, leading the line, helping the pace get going. Amazing. Xavier Numia, number 3. Again, obvious reasons. When you're on the field and dominate the Blues at scrum time and your pack is like sub 50 plus kgs lower, I got to give it up to you. Xavier Numia, all black, you got the pedigree, but you took an entire all black front row and you showed him what's Gucci. Can't really complain. Jack Canham for the Rebels and Isaiah Walker-Lewis, despite kind of getting hamstrung at the end of his game, both deserve this spot. Walker-Lewis simply because of his great defensive work, line out disruption for the Blues, and obviously just doing what a lock is supposed to do. I can't explain it any other way. Canham, same thing, but just throw in just a little sprinkle, little sprinkle of effective counter mauling. When the Reds try to get him going, Canham was there obviously to break it up, just like with his other teammate who took in my 6th row, Josh Kemeny. I thought he did a great job of just managing a lot of the defense, setting the tone, at least within the starting 8 in the forward pack. Peter Lockeye, I think, deserved that 7 jersey spot just in terms of what he was doing when he was on the field. Amazing ball carrier, great defensive work, setting up at breakdowns, causing huge penalties late, especially to get the Canes on the front foot, despite, them wasting that opportunity. And Harry Wilson at 8, for all the reasons above that I've discussed earlier. Ryan Lawrence, just for his management of space and tempo, his accuracy of passes. I hate to say it, but accuracy of passes, especially at pace, is very underrated and underappreciated in this year's league. with the performances we've been getting at the 9 position. And Ryan Lawrence, despite having an off and on fantasy career this year, kind of hurting me, but oh well, has done a great job in that regard, just being clinical. I thought the best 10 this week was Brett Cameron. Game manager, yes, he improved off the tee. Great. I thought that his ability for kicking the ball into space really helped set not only the Canes on the front foot, but also defeated a lot of the Blues' explosive plays that were done. Mark Taleo was on one trying to really force a chip and chase that he easily could have had. Cameron was always there, setting up space, kind of keeping the Canes constantly on front foot, keeping the pressure on the Blues. Obviously, to not as successful as I would have liked, but Cameron, I think, deserved an easy spot on here. Obviously, a little out of position for this week, but for my back three, I have a Tenenana Seturo at 11, Tim Ryan at 14, and Ruben Love at 15. Tenenana Seturo, absolute freak. I think still deserves an all-black cap more often than not, but just with that rotation, it's really hard to get into. Obviously, I understand that. Tim Ryan, effective, just doing what a winger does. And on top of that, just doing it kind of like how a loose forward would do, getting into breakdowns, getting a little dirty, running those short balls that are going to get lit up in the next year, playing effective support lines. That's all I can say. Great play. Obviously, the scoring, 6 tries in 3 games is exceptional. Hats off to you, my boy. Ruben Love, what can I say that hasn't been said in the last, 10, 12 weeks that I've been saying? He has been a unit, probing the line, kicking the ball, managing space, helping out the attack at second pivot, just being there, continuing the management of the game. Amazing. As for 12 and 13, I have Filippo Dungunu and AOB. Dungunu just for his defensive work, obviously a little bit off attack, but mostly defensive work and space management. Did a great job with that. ALB kind of interning, like I said, with that little Sunny Bill, offload club legacy, and especially with that probe, amazing. Defense was okay. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, especially off attack, amazing. As for my bench, I went with Olfatunga Fasi. When he was on the field outside of scrum times against Numia, it was basically lights out for him. Breakdown, great job. Defense, basically around every tackle. Taking the ball, pretty standard. And to seal the game, I had to put you in there. My boy, you were on one. Cody Taylor at 17 for all the reasons I said above. Ethan DeGroot, I thought he was a bull in a china shop versus the Satyrs. He ran a heavy ball. While I wouldn't say he was able to really compete with them for a majority of the game at scrum time, I thought he did in moments blow up a very good Crusader front row. I was very impressed with that. Obviously, at lineout, good showing. I thought Brad Shields did a great job, just disrupting kicks, getting into breakdowns. Obviously, the score helped a little bit, but defensively, he was a unit and around everything. I think the same thing could be said on the opposite side for his opposite companion in Hassan Satutu. I really thought that his ability to get into breakdowns really helped the Blues in a lot of ways. His attack really hasn't been showcased all year, but it's really just been defense and at scrum time, baller. As for the rest of this in the lineup, I went with a 5-3 split. So obviously bomb squad in 16 through 20. But for 21 to 23, it will go as follows. Sevu Reese, just being clinical, running good lines, being Sevu Reese. Obviously scoring again helps. Josh Fluke, my boy. While you didn't do anything amazing defensively, you were in it the entirety of the game, playing that dirty ball, running like a man possessed. You took 4 good shots, at least, as hospital pass calls can be said. Took them in stride. Arguably, you could have been taken off the field on that third one. I really think that third and fourth one did not make you look pretty. I'm pretty sure you yacked on that third one, but you took it like a man and you played the full 80 like a champ. I got to shout out to you because you deserve better, my boy. That's all I really can say. Just effort alone. Heart, you left it all on the field, my boy. Jordy Barrett saved a lot of tries in terms of defensive work. I really thought that his kicking skills were underrated in terms of space management, but defensively, freak of nature. But that's all it's going to be for me, guys, this week. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys next week. Peace.